Hello.
Nice. Yeah, well, yeah, I just talked to him the other day. How cool.
Hello.
He's
Hi.
fantastic. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome
Hello?
back.
You're here from
Hello?
you're here from another dimension, it looks
I
like.
think that we were literally caught in some sort of weird space because we shouldn't have been on.
We can hear you, Leo.
We can hear you.
Oh, she's here.
Can you hear us? Leo?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can?
Yes, but you
Because I can't hear you. Hold on one second, but I think it's recording, so just please continue talking.
Wonderful. Yeah. Do you want to pick up where we left off?
Yeah, I was just about to tell you about how I got into psychedelics.
Mhm.
So anyway, I had had these experiences of being ecstatic for weeks, and then kind of it dropping away, and I had to sort of discover what that state was. And I really think that it taught me a lot about entheogens when ayahuasca came into my life. And the way it happened was I went to Peru when I was like 33, no, not 33, 37 or so. I was living in Flagstaff, and I was a single mom, and my son had gone away with his dad. So I had like a couple of weeks. So I decided on the spur of the moment to go to Peru to see Machu Picchu and the rainforest without any Spanish. And I didn't know anything about ayahuasca. I didn't know it existed. I didn't do psychedelics or anything, And so so I went there, and then I canceled a portion of my trip because I didn't want to go on this tourist thing. And during this little gap of 3 days, ayahuasca just came into my life. And so I don't know if I want to go into the details of it because I've shared it elsewhere, but what happened was I had a big healing happen to me because my father had died 5 years before, and he came to me and we were able to connect. And he was like a vision, an ayahuasca vision, his head in the middle of the galaxy, and kind of this silent communication, but it was so profound and healing. And it was him, it was like, when you're in that experience and something, you have this experience and you know it. And so nobody else has to tell you. And I'm a big proponent of that, of direct experience. And that's kind of why I'm getting behind psychedelics. So it was also very familiar to me, the whole state of ayahuasca. And I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Here I am again. And I wanted to do it again. And it changed my life forever, the ayahuasca experience. So what I did was I tried to start a company to take people to go to Peru, but it was 1997, was much harder. So I decided instead to focus on my inner growth. And I spent the next several decades doing psychedelics and raising my consciousness. And that has been profound. And so now, as I am, it's only we launched in November, and I'm just now creating a community on Awake. But I feel like there is a real need for a entheogenic voice and vision. And so what I've built is something that your group would come on there and have a group. So it's like literally a social network, but it's not Facebook, and it's targeted, or it's it's a niche. It's us. Like find the others, how they say. Yeah.
That is find the others is a term with the Portland Psychedelic Society. That's always what we would say. It's like, go find the others. It's definitely
right.
True. I love that idea of having a collaborative. That's what Eudaimonia is. Me and my business partner had started Eudaimonia as a collective. And we put it on pause because we had so much going on with DN, but the idea of it is, it's kind of the same ethos, similar. We do need that. We need more collaboration and shared pieces to all the working parts, and the different things that everyone brings are just enough for what everyone needs. And so it's really, really nice to kind of grow like that.
And we're just at the beginning of this psychedelic renaissance. We have to make it a renaissance. It's not going to just become a renaissance, it's like, right? Yeah. So, so part of the plan, and I think I'd like to talk about this just to circle back to feet, is that I started to make a documentary called Iboga Saves, and that's how I started my journey of engagement. I mean, I had done Ibogaine, and that had been amazing. And so then I made a documentary, and I started to interview people, and that's when I realized that, oh, well, what's the point of making a documentary when people can't afford the treatment? And so what needs to happen is there needs to be this. So I literally pivoted to creating a nonprofit. But the documentary and the anecdotal evidence and the data and the voices, if we just think that psychedelics have been suppressed, not just since the 70s, but for 2000 years, long time, it's going to take a lot of voices and energy to change that. And so that's why I created Awake Media, and that's kind of a parallel to awake.net, and it's a coalition of media professionals who are working under the umbrella Identity of Awakening and serving the entheogenic community so that I can kind of empower people to have a collective voice. So that's the other piece of what I do.
Awake Media, can I ask where that idea, like you shared, like kind of like where you went with it and stuff, but like I think that's kind of revolutionary in this renaissance, even, is to put that, because if you're not being written about, no one's hearing your story, is something that I learned in art school. Like that was like, if your art's not being written about, like no one's seeing it, no one's witnessing it, no one knows the story, right? So it's kind of the same thing as having places where people can share through media is brilliant. And I hope that's something that I can see coming to Portland more. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, so that came about, Awake Media came about, the idea of devoting myself to Awake Media came about literally at 9/11. I was watching the towers fall, and I'm sure many of us had big like insights and revelations come from that event. And mine was that literally that we were going to need to have a spiritual revolution of consciousness in order for us to transcend what was in motion there. And so then at that point, I decided I was going to kind of, I made this inner intention, how you do sometimes, you make a promise to yourself, and you may not even say it out loud, but it starts to manifest in the world because it's like a real intention. And so, and I had the skills for it too, because, I've trained for 9 years as a designer, it's like it is my purpose because I'm qualified to do it. So, but then bringing it together with the psychedelic world has taken a long time because it's been, too illegal to really do. And, I would lose clients in the corporate world because I was working on psychedelic projects, but it wasn't mainstream enough yet. And so it was very difficult. But now we're at this place where we can really marshal our forces together and make some change happen. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like even when my business partner and I, like she served on the board of the Psychedelic Society also, and like before my term, but that is like the hard part, is this really fine space of, even though we were all pushing and communicating and educating about the Renaissance before 109 and 110 passed, it was like there were so many people that were afraid of jeopardizing their job because of the legality. So there's like, there's that feeling of like, we want to find the others, we want to share without feeling that you're going to get in trouble for helping people heal. It's really fascinating to hear you like make a statement like that, because it's definitely it is changing. And I feel like there's definitely that feeling of more confidence coming, especially here in Portland. But it's still slower moving from like how we feel ready for this change to happen. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that resonates at all.
Well, I think it's caught in the quagmire of legal various shades of gray, right? And so I think I feel that media and communication and blogging and all that is going to be a really big part. And so they spent 11 years. When the war on drugs started in the 70s, it was a council of advertising agencies that spent 11 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars during this campaign about, drugs being bad, and this is your brain on drugs, this is this. And so a lot of the mainstream people are very much still under the influence of that, because what did it do? It made people terrified, and they thought cannabis is coming around now, but think about how slow it is. When you look at how much information we already have, why are we not fast tracking all these things? Why is that? Well, there's a darker story behind that. Yeah, exactly. And so then what do you do about it? You can't go around, if you go around pointing fingers and saying you're the bad guy and you're this, what's going to happen? You're just like them. You're just pointing fingers. And so you have to find a higher way to do it. And what you have to do is show, this is how I think about it. I want to show those DEA and those people, all the people who are against it, how profound and amazing and beneficial it is to a human being to have these experiences, And then also, of course, the shadow side about this is a sacrament. This is something you need to approach with reverence. You need to be prepared for it. There's a reason why they make those initiations and ceremonies, and so that you take it seriously and you don't, you understand the power of this shift that can happen, right? So we all have a lot to communicate.
So I'm curious, it sounds like you've been on this voyage of feeling like this is part of your destiny to play a leadership role, to infuse the cosmos with your 2 cents on the matter since 9/11. And I'm curious, like, how your family or your son, or if you said you had lost maybe work that you had to do because this was your passion. I'm just wondering, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, like how because Sarie and I are both working mothers and can relate with discrimination based upon being a mother and being into psychedelics. And, just how have you navigated a lot of this? Because it sounds to me like a lot of your personal take on a lot of the accusatory nature of the division that you see for you feels kind of lower energy, and that you can become part of that mess by giving your energy to it. So it sounds like you're finding a higher road of enlightenment as your pathway, as your goal, as opposed to getting involved in finger pointing or accusations or, infighting and division. You mentioned that division at the beginning of our segment today. And just wondering, like, in your own life, I mean, I think we've all had those moments where we've had partners that maybe like aren't on this path, or family members that maybe think we're a little kooky at that family, like, get together or that celebratory holiday. And then, like, it sounds like you try to take the higher road and don't, like, for me, I feel like I'm oftentimes labeled as the woman who doth protest too much, because I end up getting very impassioned. And then I always sound like much more guilty than I actually am, because I always get very offended, and I'm just horrible at it. So I oftentimes like blow those opportunities where I feel like someone with more grace could handle it much better. So I appreciate you talking about how this lifelong journey has enabled you to really keep addressing like compassion to yourself and compassion to others. And I hear that because I think sometimes that I get very angry, and that my anger creates more destruction than I want it to. Like, I believe in Kali kind of energy in terms of the justice of like really righteous indignation and female anger. And
Hey, I get angry too.
right
I
on.
get angry too. I got angry yesterday at the integration circle when somebody just like was so like rude and interruptive, and it was like I get angry, but sorry, did I interrupt?
Yeah, no. I was just, it's more my free flow.
Okay. Well, that's
You just muted yourself by accident.
sorry. That's a really good question, because the whole of society is caught up in these conversations, and I feel as though I saw the moment when it kind of when this narrative started to become about race and about racial inequity, and then it became like about gender inequity. And I saw the moments when these came because they were very recent. And before that, we seemed fine as a culture. I'm a woman of color. I'm indigenous. I'm indigenous to South India, Dravidian culture. That's totally indigenous. But I have never, right, I've never once felt, thank you. I've never once felt that I'm something special or that somebody needs to treat me different or anything. Or my family, you're right, my family thought I was like, once my brother said to me, the problem with you is you're a hippie. And I said, the problem with you is that you're not. And, it was like, I didn't mind because I knew that they didn't know what I knew about what infusions are. And so that's the answer, I think, is that, yeah, I also have had that. But I don't really try to, I don't think you can try to talk someone into it. You can't defend it. I don't think so.
I agree with that. I think that it's really like, just like I see all different types of entheogens as a palette, right? Like if you're a painter, you would have a painting palette, right? And each one is a different like style of medium of what you get out of it and how you use it and things like that. So I think that there are some things that call people and that there are some things that just won't ever for some people, and I think that's also part of the intuitive build that you start doing inside that allows you to kind of find your way more and more after you have had the experience. That intuitive muscle just starts growing. Yeah,
exactly. And you become more attuned to energy. And in fact, it's like the stuff that seems kind of silly in the new age conversations, and kind of frou-frou. Well, when you take entheogens, you realize that's not frou-frou, that they just were describing it in a very light, and here you are inside of this, and you have to make sense of all these things, that you experience. It's like they're not one-dimensional pictures. You're inside of another dimension. It's, it's got undeniably all these things are happening. So then I think it makes you humble, first of all, because you don't know. You realize how much you don't know, but then you also realize there's all this stuff that it's so, gosh, the way your heart will expand, or you can feel the energy go through your root chakra and go up to and then seeing visions, and then having insights and feeling connected to, feeling love for nature if you're out in nature. I mean, I think people do wax poetic about it, and I want to bring that poetry back into the conversation, because that's where it's at. The images, the visions, the poetry, the insights, the elevation of our consciousness through psychedelics. And then, you have to address your shadow, you have to address trauma. If 2 out of 3 people, for example, have been, this is apart from the addiction thing, 2 out of 3 people, they say, have been sexually abused. Well, that means that 2 out of 3 people on the planet are walking around with some kind of trauma. That the tools that give you the most. So the way I think about that is that's like a soul shock. You had a trauma, it was a soul shock. And so you need something as powerful as a trauma to bring your soul back, right?
Absolutely. I love that you used love in this very loving way. The reference that you just used, I run a support group every Sunday through PPS, the Portland Psychedelic Society for Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Survivors. And we're still in the awareness month. So I think it's just having that number and knowing how common it is. You can stand at the grocery store and you can do that math simply by looking at how many women are around you. You know what I mean? And I think that's also where psychedelics, it gets us out of our pain body, but it also allows us to kind of feel where everyone's at too. When you look around and you see those numbers, you're not just looking to find a statistic, you're actually looking and you're feeling those people. You're like, oh, I can recognize what that pain is, like at a totally different frequency. And so you're maneuvering around the world with like a heightened sensitivity that is just so shut off in the world that we live in right now. It becomes really fascinating to kind of watch that transformation within the self. But yeah, thank you for kind of bringing up I think that's an important topic, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, because that's, psychedelics have the power of help healing through that process and gaining your divine feminine back.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what I would have done without psychedelics to do that. So I think that kind of segues into your first question about India and my relationship with India. And like, I have a complex relationship with India. Since your thing is called Strong Women in Psychedelic Politics, I always felt like I was too strong a woman to be in India because it was a chauvinistic culture, And so I left when I was 23. But because I just felt like I felt inhibited all my life there. And then when I came to America, I didn't feel inhibited. So it was great. But so I've done... what happened for me was Hinduism just woke up in my genes when I did I think it was LSD, and over several journeys. And, I began to see that that it was a holographic, outrageous religion that had once been entheogenically inspired. There was a Soma a long time ago. Then the Soma, I read the story about how the Soma became something only the priest could have. Of course, old story. And then and then the priests even didn't have it. And now they have, they still do hash. They have that. It's always been there, and temples always have it. But the Soma was was where all that knowledge came from, and it literally inspired so much knowledge, right? And so then I also saw that the reason why they had all these god names in Hinduism is because they're trying to tell you something about the nature of God, that, hey, you're it, everybody's it. And so it's like this very kind of archetypal, embedded in the culture, in the mythology, of the stories about becoming a god. And and if you look at Christianity, it's saying the same thing, really. Christ consciousness. Buddha is not a Buddhist. I have some little meme up there that says Buddha is not a Buddhist. He's a Buddha. I mean, you can become a Buddha too, but if you want to be a Buddhist, go ahead. It's like practicing. And at some point you have to stop practicing and say, this is what I am too. This is what it's showing me again and again. This is what I am. And so that's what happened to me. I did so many journeys that I began to see, I am God. I'm that. And it wasn't an uncomfortable thing to say, because I understood that, when I'm in my little self, or when I'm not in that consciousness, I'm not it, in the sense that I'm not being it. And so I was driving somewhere with my mom when she came to visit me in America. And I was telling her about Terence McKenna, and I played this Terence McKenna. My mom's very conservative, South Indian. She's passed away now. And so she heard it and she was totally fascinated. It was Fruit of the Gods, I think was the tape. And then So I was telling her about this thing that, that's what we are God. And she was really kind of shocked. And then she said, well, if you're Jesus Christ, you should be able to make this field into water or this field into wine or something. And I said, well, if I could feel it in as much as Jesus Christ did, maybe I could. But I don't. I'm not there. I'm not at that frequency. I'm just what you were talking about. That if I'm not there, and maybe I can get there sometime. I don't know how far there is, but it's a first step to understand that that's what you are. That's good enough, And then I just want to finish with this. When my mother died, and I looked after her, and she had Parkinson's, and she couldn't move. And I started telling her all this stuff about my psychedelic journey. She was my captive audience because she couldn't move. And I think she liked it though, because she was close to death. And so she had more, her belief systems had fallen away and she understood. So I was able to communicate at least to one member of my family how beautiful this experience is.
That's so beautiful. I'm very touched by that. When you were sharing earlier about the sexual abuse trauma that so many people have experienced, I wasn't just thinking about myself as a survivor, but like Sarie, I do a lot with counseling women that have sexual abuse history. But my husband did something for Entheo Society talking about how his addiction came from sexual abuse that he had experienced from a family member. And it's just been like very transformative for me as a strong feminist. Not that I don't align myself with victims and support, men in fighting ways that the patriarchy doesn't serve them and kind of holds us hostage. And I believe, if I understand you correctly, that a lot of your beliefs around division don't come from a desire not to celebrate differences or our own individual cultures or experiences, but that what I hear you saying is that we have so much more to gain if we are united as a kind of holistic spiritual community, if we can celebrate our differences but not let our differences divide us, is kind of my take on how you view kind of the PC culture that can go into overdrive. But in terms of my own evolving as a feminist, like I just get so angry when I think about these men out there that suffer and then don't feel like they can share their stories. And so I appreciate you talking about that, because I feel like my husband found a lot of that healing for being able to at least have the bravery, because there's so much shame for men. And I know there's shame for women too. But in our society, there's so much of this tough guy bullshit that I think it's very hard for men to talk about being sexually abused, because a lot of times we tell men that they wanted it or they liked it or it was a rite of passage and that kind of nonsense. And so I've seen a lot of men struggle to even talk about that kind of thing. And it really touches my heart that you're bringing that up, because I feel like there is a lot of pain when you're talking about such large numbers. There is a lot of pain for all people when we can't talk about things that are stigmatic. And I'm also touched by you talking about, this time with your mother and her death, because of that's such a powerful spiritual time when people are crossing over. And I feel like I hope that I'm not fearful, when I cross over. I hope that it isn't like a scary experience. I think there's a lot of fear of death in our culture, but I feel like with psychedelics, there's the possibility that we kind of flirt with death, kind of like the way when we sleep at night, it's like a little mini death and we get a little taste of what death could be like. But how good are we at saying goodbye to things that we think we need, like these material possessions or these people we think we need, when maybe, like for me, when I did Bufo, I felt like I was dying. I did it in Mexico with a shaman, and it wasn't scary to me. I felt like at peace. And I would imagine it felt like what you feel like when you're dying and being reborn into a new life, into a new vessel. But I don't know if any of that resonates with you, but I just appreciate you talking about those things, because I feel like the more we can destigmatize talking about hard stuff, and I feel like psychedelics really offer folks who are penalized for struggling with addiction, when addiction is just the medicine that they grabbed. Someone else could grab workaholicism.
Right, exactly. And that's an addiction too. It's really like yeah, exactly. I feel that way too. I feel that addiction, trauma, and suicidal ideation, all of these things, depression, all of these things that we're experiencing. I read it, I don't know where I read this or whether it came to me in a journey, I really don't know, but I had this image once of it's like if you lived in a city where the pipes were really old and had never been changed, and they just were full of unprocessed material, and and then if that, it's like, and that stuff, which is, if you think of your psyche as this repository of all this energy, and they call it etheric energy in certain cultures, and when you do psychedelics, you see stuff leaving you, you feel the energy move, you realize that you're sick, you sometimes will heal a pain you've had forever, sometimes bigger things, you see it move and shift, and you realize that you're this, you have to keep releasing, you have to keep purging, you have to keep processing your consciousness. And if you live in a culture where everybody wants to medicalize it, and you have to have a psychologist, or you have to have this, or you have to have that in order to heal your consciousness, when you could really just do it with a cannabis ceremony or a psilocybin ceremony with a couple of people, or even by yourself, if you're sane enough, to do it by yourself. I feel like that's empowering. That's empowering to have, and and what's happening by not having it, not having easy access. I know 109 just passed, but a lot of people think that that's going to bring up a host of other problems, and I don't know. I don't know enough about the politics of it or the structure of it, but
it's complex, trust me. I get to work on that stuff all the time, and I know Leo does as well in Seattle area, and it is complex and murky, and Oregon is struggling to figure it out, but hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, it's a reflection of our collective consciousness that it's complex and murky, I think, this psychedelic consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So we have work to do, it's like you have to rise to the occasion, like you have to grow and transform your consciousness so that you can change the consciousness, right?
Yeah, for sure. I like the idea, pushing having your own say so of like what your own like ability to explore means outside of a clinical setting as well. There's so many, and like you mentioned earlier, which is like these medicine had been around way before hospitals like we have today are around, way longer than the pharmaceutical industry. And it's about, going back to the ways that these medicines were originally intended, from the earth, as we are part of the earth. And, we have a relationship with them that people have like developed fear of, during this time where it hasn't been available or accessible. And that fear is going to take a long time to heal and destigmatize. But these kind of conversations are so important that way, because then a lot of people can sit and reflect and go, oh yeah, they have been around since my existence. The mushroom is actually my oldest relative because I was a fungi first, or, just whatever that looks like. I think having that ability to choose your own healing is, again, healing within itself. It gives you sovereignty, and it gives you confidence over being able to listen to your body. No one else can be inside of your biosuit with you. No one's going to understand it the way that you can. And I think that's where a big part of exploring inside and exploring our consciousness is really important.
I was going to say something about what you guys were talking about with 109. So Lakshmi, I had led Decrim Nature Seattle, which was the largest city in the United States. I wasn't there when we crossed the finish line, but I led it for the majority of its tenure as far as leading up to decriminalizing entheogens in the city of Seattle. I felt like I had a lot of hardship in that experience as far as like what happens when big money comes on and what happens when someone decides to like sabotage you behind the scenes. And I hadn't really been a political leader before that. And I felt like I got some bumps and bruises in that process. And that's now part of my trauma, but it didn't stop me from leading because now I'm leading the statewide effort for legal psilocybin. However, I also lead Entheo Society, which is a education and community building 501c3 for the state of Washington, and we're trying to go international, and that focuses more on decriminalization. And there was one point where I think I had given you some feedback where I said, well, why are you supporting someone who doesn't have a chemical dependency license doing like training on psychedelics or something for addiction? And I myself am like a licensed chemical dependency provider. And so I think I was, feeling like someone just needs to have that training and so forth. And I think if I recall correctly, you had pushed back and said, well, what about indigenous healers? They've done this since the dawn of time and they didn't have some stamp of approval from like your Western, based format and so forth. And I was like, well, yeah, she's right. She's right. But also I have to kind of challenge myself sometimes because on one end, I see people in the community, and I love that you describe it as the murkiness of like a projection of the collective, like it's all us, like we are all this this muck, right? Because I'm not at peace about it. Like part of me is like, in some interviews, I'll be like pro legalization because I know a lot of people that are doing plant medicine underground and they've got mental health issues and they're playing God with people's psyches that are very vulnerable, and it's not kosher and it's not cool and they're doing a lot of damage, right? And then I've got this other side of my personality. It's like, girl, you led this decriminalization effort that was the largest city to decriminalize the United States. Like, how can you, and you've got this Entheo Society that focuses on supporting decriminalization. And what Sarie just said, because she just said like, hey, folks, people have been doing this since the dawn of time. And admittedly, they were doing it, like you mentioned before, Lakshmi, in terms of like, it was the healers, it was the Oracle at Delphi, it was the now they were all touching God, right? And then they would transmit that to the masses. Now we're going to have a different kind of experience where your average Joe and Jane and Taniqua and so forth can go ahead and do this. So then what happens when it's like the general populace touching God and
yeah.
And there's also the concern about psychosis, because some folks, like I have a sibling that is in Berlin and constantly doing psychedelics, and I'm not sure that it benefits her or her family. She's constantly gone. It kind of feels like I'm always going for that next high. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to seem judgmental, but I see people go overboard. So yeah, just some thoughts.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, I think you're right about people going overboard, and I just had so many thoughts as you were talking. It was like stream of consciousness. But to go back to what you said about the murkiness, etc. Well, so that's because they're not going deep enough. If you go deep enough and you journey often enough, you're going to come out of the murkiness. You're going to heal your trauma. You're going to come out on the other side. And I'm testament to that. There is an other side and I'm experiencing it. So I'm coming from that place. Like, I don't do psychedelic journeys so much anymore. I just do pot. I don't really need it. And I'm able to process almost everything I need to process or come to terms with, or, transcend the daily day-to-day things with cannabis. That's pretty amazing that you can get to that place. And I had all the impediments of anybody might have, childhood trauma. I wasn't addicted to heroin, but I was addicted to cigarettes and other things to stave off this feeling of emptiness or darkness or wrongness or whatever inside for years. So I'm also a proponent of, we're just in the beginning of the psychedelic movement outwards. And it's happening. It's going to take a long time. We have time. You have time. I have time to change things. So I'm not so worried about it. The day-to-day like skirmishes. It's like, okay, I'll regroup and think about how can I change this really. And then I'll realize that, oh, well, you can't have this conversation. If you start to defend your position with this person, you're involved in a defensive kind of egoic conversation. It's not going to work, right? It's a challenge to improvement.
No, I
course.
can relate. I just feel like I've spent too much of my psychedelic career there. And I'm personally in this spiritual place where I'm like, like I want power because I want to create change. And I feel like power sometimes enables you to create change and to help lead. But at the same time, I don't want to be this person that you just described that caught up in defensiveness that, yeah, I just think that that's
Don't want power. I think the answer is to not want power. Seriously.
So any thoughts on, Sarie, I don't know if you have any questions, because I know we're going to end in about 6 minutes, but I just wonder, like, for me, Lakshmi, do you see, like, as you see all these corporate venture capitalists that are kind of working to prepare for making money and kind of cornering the market and all that stuff and the strategy of it all, like, it sounds like your personal take on that is that your spirituality has led you to a place of recognizing that this too is part of the process.
Absolutely. I mean, what we don't heal, we repeat. Let me say that again. What we don't heal, we repeat. And we have been repeating a lot of the same patterns for the last 2,500 years, with colonization and Constantine, and there's a lot of unpacking, and it's not going to happen overnight, but it's also understanding where everyone's at independently, right? Where everyone is on their different dimension that they're living in. Like, there's so many different tiers and facets of people that are in similar vibration, right? And so they operate within that, because that's how like-minded people are. They connect, right? How that energy attaches itself to another energy. And that being said, there are a lot of people that are taking the corporate interest and doing the thing that we've done in the past that's led us to numbers of SSRIs that don't work, to name one, and the suicide rate even on those jumping up. Like,
right.
We can't look at health as something to monetize.
Exactly right. I'm totally with you on that, and well said. And that's what's happening, and I know this from the inside out, because as a designer, I worked in healthcare marketing and worked for hospitals before I became more psychedelic oriented. And I realized then that it was betraying, because they would call these programs supposedly to help people profit centers. Just the word profit center betrayed their intent, and so when our health becomes a part of someone's bottom line, our health or lack of health becomes someone's bottom line. It's a dangerous situation we're living in. We've gotten used to the danger, but it's dangerous.
And the fear behind it too, of like challenging it, because it seems so much bigger than you, because that's what we've been taught for many, many years, that these structures are bigger than us and that we actually have to follow them. And again, you sit and you're thinking about, like, what are we physically in this world, and who gets to say so other than me? You know what I mean? What these things, what these rules are. That's where my frustration gets in all the time. It's like, wait, who's the boss of me?
Yeah, so it's about authority, right? I mean, literally about your own authority. But I think that takes you to authorship, because authorship, and that's really what I think you have to communicate, and you have to paint a different picture or try to change someone's mind, or just, and then it just becomes another part of your psychedelic journey, more outward.
For sure. For sure. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I was just going to say, on the topic of, corporate interest in not healing what we repeat to it, just like this movement that we're seeing, all of these venture capitalists and deals being made, and different connections of the way that even media is getting infiltrated, how the movement gets talked about, things like that. There's a lot to be said about the way that money comes in and almost like a disease kind of spreads, and no one even knows that it's happening, and it's under their toes, and they get, stuck and lured in the illusion of something that's actually seeded in the wrong intention. And whatever grows from that seed is going to be of that intention, no matter what. And it's kind of one of those things that those seeds have already been planted. And it's not about the fact that we have to fight those seeds. We just have to plant our own seeds of intention in a different way.
Exactly right. Yeah. I think that is what I'm doing and what you're doing and what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so the other thing I want to say about this is that so Awake as a brand is a brand that many organizations can be a part of, can feel that they belong to. So I would really love it if you put your presence on Awake, for your organizations and yourself personally, so that we can grow it, because the social media edifices that we now use. So I just want to tell you that Facebook blocked me because they said that what I was saying was false. Awake.net, they blocked my page. And so I realized that it was because I was talking about God, and somebody doesn't think that's real. But the fact that I'm blocked for something like that is really a serious situation in our culture. So, I mean, I don't take it personally. I'm going to actually leave, but I created Awake.net as this alternate thing because I saw that where there's no advertising and things are going to rise or be interesting organically, based on the content.
So awake.net. So if we're going to tell viewers, like, check it out, awake.net. But do you mind sharing what has excited you thus far? Like maybe some people that have come on or something that's happened on there thus far that you're feeling that is giving you a sense of positivity or hope or empowerment or?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we launched in November, and we had a fantastic launch. I think there were like 90 people were really excited. We have a great board of directors, and about 400 people are joining every day. I'm not doing anything. I just put some posts out, and we have monthly free integration circles. And then what's really nice is that the structure allows you to put up your own integration circles and create crowdfunding campaigns. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's addressing some of the needs, and so I'm just building the community slowly because I don't want it to become like a runaway horse,
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. I love that you guys do monthly integration as well, and keep that going into that's what we say, like in the Portland community, is that integration is community. Like just within itself, and community healing is so powerful to do it in a group. And it really is like, from a shared place of like really that love space, because everyone's looking for connection, for inclusion, for a sense of purpose, and to have an intention that they can move forward. So I love that you guys do that. I always say that with psychedelics, I have awareness. With awareness, I have intention. And with intention, I have a purpose. And it's just like kind of like that philosophy that I kind of like feel integration really does provide.
Right. Well, to me, it's a form that I have to evolve. I mean, that even maybe it's a form that's evolving, because it's new and it's different from 12 steps, and you have to use a different form. And there's a lot of confusion about it I see out there, about whether it should be this or that. But I think like what you said is really right, that in the end, it's about connecting and feeling a sense of some being heard and having a place you can heal.
Mm-hmm.
So you can create your circle too on there. So if you join as a free member, you can't do that, but check it out. I don't want to take up screen time on this, but check out the membership plans. And so if you become a feet friend for $10 a month, then you're helping. Everything is helping promote feet, but we want to build up a fund, and I'm doing it this way because, as you said, all these billions of dollars going into the for-profit the monetization of psychedelics, but very little comes to a program like FEAT. Well, I haven't yet started promoting it, but even what I have promoted, I see that there's not a lot of attention for it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can change people, to be. I think that's really where. I hope you don't mind me sort of thinking through this in the moment.
Oh, no.
But I think that's really where. So I'm a student of the I Ching, and the I Ching says that during times of uncertainty, you should join with the lowly. And people who are suffering with addiction are like they've really fallen so low, and many of them are victims of the system we just talked about. And so then the other part of it is your own spiritual consciousness. As you raise it, you understand things like what is a bodhisattva? Why is a bodhisattva a bodhisattva? What inspires you to do it? And you have a journey or something where you feel this compassion, you feel connection, and you want to help people. And so it's not just me. I think there's like a line of bodhisattvas out there who, if they can be inspired, we can literally change the world. We can change the society from what it is today to one that's, doesn't have false ideas about equality,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because, and this can go beyond superficiality, understands that gender, maleness and femaleness are inside of you both. You might have a certain outer expression, but you have access to the other side, and you're always switching back and forth between male and female in this, in roles. Hey, how about looking at gender like that, and not like saying how about that? Because that's so healing to understand that. And the other part of it is, basically finding your purpose and being effective in life. If you could do that, and if you could do it for other people, and if you could create that many hands. I'm going on too long, but that's what.
No, you're good.
Oh,
Absolutely.
no, I find it so inspirational.
Mhm.
I feel like we'd love to have you back on. Like what I'd love to do is check back in with you after we get our Strong Women in Psychedelic podcast kind of up and running, and maybe check back in with you, within this next year that's coming up, and really support you, because I've really felt like just very touched by meeting you. And I dig you, and I dig your perspective and your gentleness and your wisdom. So I really want to honor the work that you're doing. And I just love what you said about the I Ching, that when you're in a tough time or whatever, to align yourself with those that are suffering. I find that very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. I'm really touched by it too, and it really is profound to think that way. Because when you go into a recession, or the economies, whatever is all the things that are going on, but the tendency is to contract, right, into yourself and into your own. And so the I Ching says that you have to. It's not the private interests of the individual, but the goals of humanity that are important.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I love what you said at the beginning about how we're all interconnected, because I'm working on developing like a religious framework and so forth right now. It's something I've been working on for years, as far as entheogens and things of that nature. But at the central premise of any like religion I help create is that concept of everything that you're talking about, which is not new, it's very old, but the concept that we're all interconnected.
Right. And that's what it comes back to over and over and over again, is that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll end there, but I just want to say thank you and blessings to you.
Yeah.
It's so nice meeting both of you and really connecting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you so much. I am definitely going to check out your organizations, and I'd love to continue talking outside of this, not in right now as we're going to have
Yeah,
words
yeah,
out of our mouths. But yes, after this podcast, I would definitely love to stay connected and possibly do some more talks even with like PPS.